Chris Cuomo had a bit of I don't even know how to describe it, like just a super honest and candid moment on his SiriusXM show. So during the SiriusXM show, Chris Cuomo opened up about how he feels about his role in the media and his job at CNN. And he said, quote, "I don't like what I professionally do. I don't think it's worth my time." He also said, "I don't want to be trafficking in things that I think are ridiculous. Such things include talking to Democrats about things that I don't really believe they mean and talking to Republicans about them parroting things they feel they have to say." He also wants to stop analyzing the president, who we all know is full of crap by design. So there was more of what he had to say, but I just thought it was such an enlightening moment because I mean, I've been candid with our audience. There are definitely days where you read the news and you deal with the people you deal with, not in my case, not at work, but just the subjects that we cover and the people involved in those stories. And you just feel like there's no point, that you're not getting through to people, that it has no positive influence, and that it's a giant waste of time, especially when you see the country deteriorating as rapidly as it is. And so when I saw that, I really appreciated it because I thought maybe I feel that way because I work in independent news. I always wondered how people who are like highly successful in traditional media feel. And I'm happy to find that they feel the same way, that everything is BS.
Well, this is part of why we like Cuomo. Sometimes he slips up and is too honest. He got into another part about why he's frustrated, which we empathize with as well. Then he backpedaled, but that was to be expected. But in terms of the BS factor, they have to deal with it on mainstream media 1,000 times more than we do. So if a Republican comes on and does nonsense talking points, I'll yell at him, I'll cut his mic, and then I'll throw him off air. I don't care. So I'm not going to let you BS our audience. On the other hand, we probably have the most productive conversations with conservatives of anyone, because from time to time we actually do find honest conservatives and then have really interesting conversations where sometimes we'll even find agreement and then wouldn't yell at each other when we don't. But you got to be honest, and you can't do talking points. And so, but if you work on CNN, you have to put up with that crap 24/7. That's the business model. And by the way, the Republicans are not alone. Republicans are much worse, but establishment Democrats have talking points up the gazoo, to borrow a phrase from Joe Biden, I'm sure. No malarkey. Okay, it's up the gazoo. So
let me give you more of what he said.
We don't have to and we don't have to put up with it, but that's what Chris has to do every day, and it's kind of refreshing to find out that he's frustrated by it too.
Yeah. So you're right. He did later backpedal some of what he said. I'll give you those updates in just a second. But more of his statements on his SiriusXM radio show. He said, "I don't want to spend my time doing things I don't think are valuable enough to me personally. I don't value indulging irrationality and hyper-partisanship." And then he says, "I don't think it's worth it to me because I don't think I mean enough. I don't think I matter enough. I don't think I can easily change anything. So then what am I really doing?" So I definitely have those days, right, where one person isn't going to change things. I mean, that's just demonstrably true. But it's not just about, oh, I can't change anything. It's about feeling like you have to like fight people who should be in the battle with you. You know what I mean? So it's like you have all these obstacles, and the very people who should be helping you out are the people who fight against you when it comes to changing certain things, like Medicare for All, for instance, doing something substantive to improve our healthcare system. We have to fight Democrats more aggressively than any other group of people in trying to accomplish that. And that is the most exhausting thing. And I think, look, I don't know if Cuomo can relate to this because he's in a different situation in this regard. But in our case, we have to fight everybody. Like everybody hates us because there's irrationality on all sides. You have the Democrats. I just mentioned some of their irrationality. And then you have Republicans who support everything that Donald Trump does. His approval rating among Republicans is insanely high. I don't know. It's just everything is very hyper partisan. You're not allowed to make nuanced arguments. People will put words in your mouth all the time, even when you make your own like clear statements about things. And so, yeah, sometimes it gets tough.
So on the hyper-partisanship, it's really nuanced and complicated, because I bet Chris and us would not agree on a lot of what he means by that. I bet he would find, because we don't agree necessarily politically, he's far more moderate, in terms of the center of Washington and New York, to be honest. But at least he's open and honest and open-minded about it. But anyway, I'm sure that he would consider progressives hyper-partisan. But the reality is, to me, that I agree with Anna, the hyper-partisanship is not about your positions. So Josh Hawley, who's a Republican senator, is very right-wing, but I believe that a lot of his positions are honest, and that's okay. I don't mind that kind of so-called partisanship as long as it's honest. What I can't stand is the ideologues. And some of them, most of whom are disingenuous. They parrot talking points, whether they're Republican talking points fed to them by ExxonMobil and Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson and all those companies that they actually work for, or it's Democratic establishment who are far more sophisticated and working for the same exact companies, and to find a way to support them while pretending to be fighting against them. Or, by the way, now new ideologues on the left who are like, nope, absolutes. I only deal in absolutes. I only deal with black and white. And if you try to do nuance, I'm going to shut off my mind. Okay, well, we don't agree. We just don't agree. And so it's hard not to get frustrated by all of those factors, which are dominant. We are the minority, trying to have real honest conversations. And of course, the absolutists and the ideologues will pick apart every sentence. So right now, go on social media anywhere, and you will easily find, whether it's comments on YouTube, Facebook, or my Twitter mentions, any of those platforms, any platform at all, and you will easily find thousands of people who say, I am too far left, and thousands of people who will say I'm too far right, thousands who will say I'm the radical who's trying to destroy the Democratic Party, and thousands who say I'm a shill for the Democratic Party. Okay?
It is pretty amazing. Yeah, it is pretty amazing, because you're not allowed to have a position based on what the topic is, right? Like, you have to be an absolutist based on what your ideology is supposed to be. And you're right, even when you're supposedly ideologically consistent, people end up putting words in your mouth, and people speculate about intentions. That's one other thing that I see all the time. And so, yeah, it becomes frustrating because you get caught in these ridiculous fights when we should be focusing on solutions that matter. And we should be open to conversations with people we do disagree with without being labeled, all sorts of nonsense names. But I do want to move on to one other thing that he brought up during this rant, because this is where I think he's being bogged down by something, and it's all in his head, because he thinks he needs to act a certain way when he gets approached by certain people. So apparently some biker guy approached him when he was outdoors and said some mean things about him. I don't know. And so he said that he wanted to be able to tell you to go to hell, to shut your mouth. I don't get to do, or I don't get that doing what I do for a living, me being able to tell you to shut your mouth, or I will do you the way you guys do each other. So he's frustrated that he's not able to speak his mind when he gets confronted by these people. But why not? I mean, obviously, don't punch him in the mouth, but why can't you tell someone who's pestering you to shut up? Who cares? Are you going to get fired from your job for doing that?
Yes.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Anna, you've only worked at the Young Turks, so you could tell anybody off that you want, right?
Oh, I know.
Right. So that's the experience you've had. But when I was at MSNBC, it was for a short period of time, but it was about a year, and it was a hell of an education. So number one, they definitely control what you say. So Chris Cuomo, I'm positive, got in a world of trouble for threatening to throw the guy down the stairs when he called him Fredo. And so that's obviously one of the things he's frustrated by. I remember MSNBC told me, don't support certain politicians, don't speak out too much against Obama. And by the way, you're not allowed to criticize any of the other hosts. Joe Scarborough, for example, cried to mommy about me. And please get him to stop criticizing me. And when you're there, you have to, abide by those things because they're paying you money on their dime. It's their network, okay? And so those are the rules of the game, and that's what Cuomo's frustrated by. Yeah, if he told that guy off, it would have gotten into the press, and an executive of CNN would have definitely yelled at him, and a couple of times, if it happens a couple of times, they'd fire him. And so Chris is super lucky in that he says he's got enough money. He said it in that rant that, he's thinking maybe I go do something else with my life because I don't need this kind of aggravation where I'm constantly bottled up and the whole thing's pointless. Look, that I think is the most important point, and that's part of why I did not take the offer at MSNBC. So they offered to double my salary but move me to the weekends. And I didn't take that offer because they put all these restrictions in. But the second reason I didn't take the offer was I went to MSNBC and you guys, the Young Turks audience, put me on there. We did a campaign. If it wasn't for you guys, I never would have been a host on MSNBC. It's an old story, but it's 1,000% true. And it's an amazing story. But the reason you guys put me there and the reason I wanted to be there is because I thought I could make a difference, that we could influence people because all the politicians and all the influencers watch cable news. But it turned out, no, it's not like there's an honest debate between Sean Hannity and Rachel Maddow, and whoever wins the debate, the politicians are going to listen to. No, the politicians listen to who write their checks, right? Whoever signs their checks. The donors control everything. So really, cable news is just a circus. And so it's hard, if you're a thoughtful person, not to get frustrated by your role in that circus. And that's part of the reason why I didn't take their offer.
So, most people would have just played ball. So that's like, you don't get enough credit for that, because the prestige that comes along with being associated with a cable news network and the money that comes along with it, most people would not be able to turn that down to remain true to what they believe. So just giving you a little shout out there. But Chris did walk back some of his statements. And he said the following, this is reported by The Hollywood Reporter. He said, "It is frustrating to do this job in an environment where people are not interested and open. It is hard to practice journalism when people are so intent on believing what they want to believe for political advantage. It makes you question, is it worth the effort? Can I make a difference? Can I personally make a difference? Is the way I'm doing this working?" And then he says, "I love where I am. I love what I do. That doesn't mean it isn't frustrating. I don't think it's ever mattered more than it has during this administration." So I have the same exact roller coaster feelings about what we do. So I can relate to that. I think it's totally normal. You can both love what you do and then on any given day, absolutely despise what you do, right? But it's a temporary feeling.
Yeah, and he complimented Jeff Zucker and said it was a great job and they give him freedom, etc. Partly Kamani's got to do it, and the PR department told him, "Hey, what are you doing? You're embarrassing all of us. That's not fair to your colleagues, etc." And partly I'm sure he means it. It is a great job. It's just it pays a ton of money, gives you unbelievable prestige, and you get a little bit of influence. So now, the influence, it turns out, doesn't matter in government, doesn't matter with politicians or the bills you're passing. But the thing where it matters is affecting voters. And so that's why during the heat of a primary, I want to get on cable news as much as possible for progressives, because older voters do watch cable news. And in primaries, it matters, right? And then lastly, for us, so I never made it back to any of those kind of salaries that I used to get on TV. But I sleep great at night, knowing that we actually have influenced, and it's not an exaggeration, and that millions, tens of millions of people and gotten the word out about what progressive policies actually are. And the young are overwhelmingly progressive. It's largely because of the much larger phenomenon of the internet and the cultural shift that it's created. But we played a small role in that, and we were the largest online news network in that cultural shift. So if we made that difference, then I feel fantastic about it. And so on any day that any of us get discouraged, we should remember that together we moved a generation.